everybody. Welcome to Life Stories Podcast for the Love of Books. I'm Shara Goswick, your host, and I'm so glad that you're here. Y'all know how much I love talking about books and talking to authors. And today's guest is one of my favorite kids authors that I've been following since I worked in an elementary school library. Her name is Kimberly Willis Holt. She's written many children's books, and she was so much fun to talk to. I'm so excited to share this interview with you. Our word of the week this week.
It's the word of the week.
Is discipline. One of the things that Kimberly talked about was the discipline it takes to be a writer. I think sometimes we look at people who write books or can sing or do this thing and we think that they just have this talent and they can just do it. And a lot of times people do. They have a gift to do different things, different arts, but it also takes a lot of work. Nobody just does it easily without any work. And I think we can apply that discipline to any area of our lives. Anything that needs to be done that we don't really want to do, like exercise for me, it takes discipline. You got to do it anyway, whether you want to or not. If you want to meet that goal, if you want to see that end result, you have to apply that discipline. So I loved talking to Kimberly. She was so fun. And I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Thanks for being here.
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Good.
Oh, look at your beautiful Christmas tree.
Thank you. This was the first time we've decorated before Christmas. We didn't host Thanksgiving this year, and so we just went ahead and did it early. And I love it. My favorite thing is coming in here in the mornings with the lights off and drinking my coffee in the dark with the Christmas light. I love it.
I do. That's so funny you said that. You must be a morning person.
I am.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure I've got my phone on silence here. And same thing with me. I get up really early, like 5, or sometimes before.
Yeah.
And I same thing. I just, the Christmas tree just went up 2 days ago. And so I've enjoyed getting up in the morning and I'm having my coffee and I can open the drapes up because where we put it, you can see it from the front. And I thought, well, if it's by, they can see it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I've really been looking forward to this.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that I didn't have the foresight to send you a book. I apologize about that.
No, I don't ever ask for a book. And normally if I'm going to talk about a specific book and I haven't read it, I will go out and buy it and read it. But I was looking at your books and I think I've read 6 of yours. So I thought I can vouch for her book, even if I haven't read it yet.
You can read 1 and do that. So
yes,
but thank you. If you read 1, that means a lot. So 6 means a lot. Yeah.
Well,
so thank you.
I have loved your work and I actually met you. I don't know if you remember this a long time ago. I worked at a library for a while and you had like a writing workshop or something in Arlington and I went out there and got to meet you and I was so excited. But I have loved your books since then. I mean, I read so many kids' books when I was in the library because I had to, but I wanted to. And man, there's some great kids' books out there. But I've kind of followed your work since then. And so I've just love what you do. I love.
Thank you.
You've written some incredible books. And I have to say my favorite, and you may think this is silly, my favorite is Dear Hank Williams.
Oh, I love hearing that.
That book.
I love hearing that.
It was just a precious story. I loved it.
Thank you. I just wish I'd been smart enough to have said, Dear Twyla Swift. Wait. See, I don't even know her name.
Because I need to write another one.
Well, it's just funny because, Hank Williams, even though I wasn't around when he was,
right.
Yeah. I just assumed that people knew about him.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't thinking that might be a little bit of a, thing.
I know who he was, I guess. I mean, I certainly wasn't around when he was around either, but I just thought it was so precious, those letters. And I'm a big letter writing fan. I mean, for years, that's just what we did. And I loved it. So maybe that's why I just loved this.
Me too.
I thought it was precious.
I love reading books of letters.
Yes.
And, there's a book that Lee Smith wrote called Christmas Letters. I don't know if you're familiar with her writing.
I haven't.
She's a Southern writer, and it's a wonderful book to read right now. In fact, I might reread it.
Yeah.
Because it's like doing the Christmas letter every year.
Oh.
And you get the story of the family unfolds.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful.
I'll have to look that one up. That sounds really good.
And so but I love books of letters of real people. To me,
Mhm.
that is, well, Dear Genius, of course, is a standard in our business,
Yes.
uh, Ursula Nordstrom. But there's so many, I think letters are very telling,
Mhm.
I don't know if they will be now,
Right.
even if you had everybody's emails, I don't know if it would be the same as the way
Right.
letter writing was.
I
Yeah.
don't think so. I still have a box of all my letters from people from all over, and not all the time, but I will take them out occasionally and just kind of flip through and laugh and cry. And they're just precious to me. So
Me too. And
I just love
you
that.
have books out. So did you, when I met you years
Mhm.
ago, had you been published at that point? Or is this something?
No, so here's what I say about my books. I'm not so embarrassed of them that I won't tell people about them, but I'm not so proud of them that I tell everybody about them.
Oh,
I wish I had taken more time. I was very hasty in a lot of things that I did. And so they're very small. The biggest book I wrote was about our son's journey with autism. And
yeah.
so, but I wish I had taken more time in editing and more time
You know
in
what? You can do that you know what I mean? I think my best advice for you is do not reread something that is published. You know,
right.
because
Right.
believe me, if I went back, I read parts of my books when I'm reading aloud or presenting, but if I went back and read cover to cover,
Yeah.
um, I think it would be the same thing. So
Yeah.
we grow.
Yes.
And the
And I
book
would
we
do
write
it.
today is not the book we wrote yesterday or the book
Oh,
we'll write
for
tomorrow.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I would definitely do things differently. And eventually I may veer towards that again. I had met with she was a writing coach, but she was a certified life coach. And I met with her for 6 months and we didn't talk about writing, but she was helping me with things that were going to help me with my writing. But then when I got finished, I had this little nudge that I had had years ago to start a podcast. And so when I finished with her, I started the podcast and then I've not ever done anything else with writing since then. So
Yeah.
I am where I'm supposed to be right now. And
Well,
eventually I will
thank
go
God for
back to
people
that.
like you.
I love
I
it.
love podcasts. So
I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So not everybody has read all your books or 6 of them. But I want to know what your publishing journey has been like your very first book when you were trying to have it. Which one was your first one? Was it
My
Zachary
Louisiana
Beaver?
Sky.
My
My
Louisiana
Louisiana
Sky.
Sky. Yeah.
Okay. And what was that journey like trying to get that book published? What was that? What did that look like?
Well, it was, it was a different time. First, I should clarify that. So my journey is going to be probably very different than someone who's coming out of the gate now and writing their
Yeah.
first book. Um, I, when I started writing that book, I got excited. I had a false start. Somebody had told me I needed to break into publishing. I needed to write a romance. Well, I didn't read romance, but I attempted to write one. And I couldn't understand why I didn't want to write anymore after the first or second day. And so when I finally, this idea of from my childhood, or not idea of this moment in my childhood that inspired My Louisiana Sky, came to me. And it was about a child who has parents who are mentally challenged.
Mhm.
And, if you read close enough, you know that the mother has some mental difficulties. The father really has dyslexia, but
Yeah.
it's not defined as such. But anyway, they have a childlike personality. Both of them are very, how should I say, innocent. And I
Yeah.
loved once I realized that was the story I was meant to write, I could not wait, to write.
Yeah.
And so I would get up in the morning, early in the morning. I'd go to at that time we lived in Amarillo, and I would go to the screen porch and I would write for a few hours. And then I would read to my parents on the phone because the setting,
Wow.
their hometown where my grandparents lived, and in their time period. And
Mm.
so, they would tell me things sometimes that would add to it, and it wasn't a true story, but maybe the setting, something about the setting, or maybe I would use a name that they actually knew someone by that name. And they say, well, you may not want to name that person that because we
Yeah.
knew, Jesse Wade. I remember trying to get Jesse Wade's name right. Well, I think I had Bobby Ray, and Dad goes, well, we knew Bobby Ray. You don't better not use Bobby Ray. Well, how about Jimmy Ray? Or, I just went on, and they knew somebody by that name. Finally, Jesse Wade. But I wrote the first draft in 9 days.
Wow.
But it needed tons of work, and
Yeah.
I rewrote it for 3.5 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
would go to writing conferences
Mhm.
nearby. Amarillo had one. I did go to romance writing conferences because I learned from them too.
Yeah.
There was anybody that was published. I was hungry to hear what they had to say. And I went to New Mexico, to Colorado, to Oklahoma. Those were places I could drive to in a few hours.
Sure.
And I learned. And then once I was at a point where I felt like the book, I remember, I thought was ready, I
Yeah.
would, make appointments with editors and bounce,
Mm.
so that's how it started. So I did not get an agent right away. Um, I did not, no agent wanted me. I got form letters, rejections from them. And, I did come close five times. There were five editors all at once because I was multiple submitting, which I know that they don't like that, but I did. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Because they just take a long time. And probably
Yes.
part of the reason they take a long time is because people multiple submit. But I sent it to these different publishers, and five of them around the same time, mailed me, back then the snail mail,
Right.
weren't really using email. And they said, can I have a little bit longer, time with this? We want to
Wow.
considering this. Well, I was so excited. I thought, oh my gosh, they're all going to offer something. And then in 1 week's time, every one of them said no.
Oh gosh.
And so that was a depressing week, but I never
Yeah.
gave up because, I had 17 rejections total, but I never gave up because every time I went to the mailbox and pulled out my rejection, I would visualize myself signing books.
That's awesome.
And you move towards that which you think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe even then, even maybe for a few minutes I didn't, or maybe that one day or something,
Yeah.
1 week, maybe that was the lowest week. But I kept rewriting. And let me say this, all five of them said, when they said, no, this isn't for us, we like the idea of the story.
Yeah.
The writing isn't there.
Hmm.
And they didn't feel like, I guess, my writing had potential. But I
Yeah.
kept rewriting and I kept learning and kept taking classes. And one of the writing conferences that I went to, there was an agent speaking that I was really impressed with because of the way she had such compassion for her writers and
Yeah.
the covers. And oh my goodness. And I went up to her and said, I just wrote a children's book, or I've written a children's book. And she goes, I don't represent children's. Turned away from me.
Wow.
I was not going to give up. So I saw
Yeah.
her in the hallway, cornered her, and said, I know you don't represent children's writing, but do you know someone who does,
Right.
who is like you? And she goes, well, I don't know if she's like me, but you might contact, so and so. And so I did. And so that agent ended up taking that manuscript on.
Wow.
And so she started getting the rejections. She was part of those 17. She received
Yeah.
those 17 rejections. It went 17 plus what she got.
Right.
And so I was a tireless rewriter.
Yeah.
And at one point I contacted her because somebody that rejected me, something he said spoke to me. And it was Richard Jackson. I don't know if you have heard his name before, but he has been an editor of Cynthia Rylant, Gary Paulson, some really giant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, he said her writing voice is interesting, but the second half of this story sounds like a soap opera. And it struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
Because I was proud of the first half of the book, but I wasn't the second half.
Yeah.
And so I contacted my agent when she sent me that rejection. I said, I want to rewrite. Don't send it to somebody else. It needs a major rewrite. And she said, well, Kimberly, I didn't want to tell you this, but you're
Uh-oh.
about to get an offer, I think.
Oh my goodness.
She was out of town. I was hoping it was today, but she said, I think she's out of town till Tuesday. And that was Christy Ottaviano. And
Wow.
that's who I'm with today.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so Christy took it on, and guess what she said when I finally got a letter? It took about 6 months to get a letter from
Oh
her.
my goodness.
People think, oh, I thought I'd get one the next week,
Yeah.
but mine needed so much work. And she said, Kimberly, it was about a 10 to 12 page letter. And she said, the second half of this story doesn't work.
Right.
Keyed in on that too. She said, I think you need to find a new second half.
Yeah.
And so that's why it took so long. And I back and forth for a while, to her. She was so patient with me. She was a young editor. And she was so patient with me and would let me send her, once I started keying in on what the book was going to be about, really be about.
Right.
She let me send her a few chapters at a time. I don't think she has time for me to do it that way again. I don't know. And she told me in more recent years, she said, Kimberly, I could not take on your book in the state it was in.
Yeah.
Today. She said, back then, the agent convinced her I was a tireless rewriter.
Right.
And but she said, today it's just different. It's a different world.
Yeah.
So she said it would have had to been a lot closer. And the crazy thing is, I had rewritten that book many, many times by the time she saw it.
Right.
It's just, people just don't understand sometimes.
Yeah.
Writer, the writing is the rewriting. It really is. I mean, unless you're just one of these people, that does, I think they rewrite in their head or
right. Right.
Because it takes that kind of commitment.
Yeah.
And it's hard. That's what makes it hard. And that's what makes it hard for people to do it. Because, I think everybody has a story. I really do.
Oh, sure. Sure.
But I think that's what draws the line between the people who actually do it and the people who actually don't do it.
Yeah.
It's what I struggle with today, is the discipline.
Right.
Because I had a little boy ask me recently, what motivates you to write? And I said, I'm not always motivated to write.
Yeah. You got to do it anyway.
And I said, that was what it was like in the beginning. But I said, I would not finish a book if I had to be motivated every time I sat down. I said, discipline. Discipline is the best tool in a writer's toolbox.
Sure.
Yeah. That was a long answer to your question.
No, I'm glad. I wanted to hear all of that. But I've talked to several writers, several authors, and all of your stories are different and they're all incredible. But I feel like people who are aspiring writers need to hear all these different stories, because nobody's journey is the same. Nobody's practice is the same. Everybody has a different thing, but they all need to hear it. And I told the last author I talked to, I have so much respect for authors, and because I know it's so much work, but I read so much and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for y'all that are doing all this great work, because I love to read. So, what was your favorite book, or do you have a favorite book that you wrote? Favorite story of yours?
Yes. It is The Water Seeker.
Really?
And that is one of my least popular books. So it's so funny how that can happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it took me 7 years.
Wow.
And I didn't write it every day for 7 years. I would put it down and pick up another book and write another book. And then same thing. I would just go back and forth till finally I just said, stop.
Right.
Just don't write it. And then when I thought about that, because you're never going to finish it this way. And then when I thought about that, I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I want to write this book. But I feel like it was a very challenging book for me, because it was over a course of a lot of time. And the Oregon Trail is in it. And but I really, and I might feel differently if I sat down and read every one of my books. I might have gone, oh my gosh, no wonder that's the most popular. I don't know. I just feel like that it is. Once I finished it, I was like, oh, I'm so glad I wrote this book.
Good. That's awesome. That is one of the ones I have not read. I just read Part of Me and I cried twice in the book.
Oh, thank you.
I cried when Blue got hurt, when he was trapped and got hurt. And then I cried in the end whenever, and I forgot the character's name, but her family packed up her bags and got her ready to, Rose, when they took her, they were going to take her on her little book tour. And I cried both times. It was just so sweet. It was such a beautiful story because it was neat to watch. It was several generations that you talked about. And so it was neat to watch the writing and the love of reading in each, generation. And that was such a sweet story.
Well, and it was really inspired by my family of readers. My mom and dad were readers, and my mom, who ended up becoming a teacher, but she said, I didn't read a novel until I married your dad.
Wow.
Dad was reading The Yearling, she said, and he loved it so much, and he would tell her some things about it.
Yeah.
And so she started reading The Yearling was the first novel I believe that she ever read cover to cover. And then after that, she was a reader.
Yes.
And all my sisters are readers. My daughter, of course, is a reader. Just, it's very much a part of our, family. It is. My grandparents would lay in bed, my paternal grandparents, and they would be reading. And, and before bed, I always remember that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
My husband hates to read. I think he's a physical therapist, and I think school just did it for him. He's done with reading anything. My daughter is
he had to read a lot.
Yeah, he had to read a lot, and it wasn't fun. My daughter her kids are old enough now to where she has time to enjoy reading. And so it's been wonderful. She started reading and we share books and we go back and forth, and it's been so much fun to do that with her, share those with her. So, I've loved that. How do you feel? When was the first book that you did? What year was that you started writing?
I started writing June 15th, 1994.
94.
And my first book came out in 1998.
Okay. How do you feel like this whole journey has changed you? Because I know you're not the same. None of us are the same. But how has this journey? Because it's been a long journey for you. How has it changed you?
Well, it's 30 years now.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine my life without it. But I will say, beyond having books on the bookshelf, beyond knowing, oh my gosh, really it is sort of a surreal feeling when you pick up a book that you wrote and you went, oh my gosh, how did I even write all these words? But the thing that I think has been an incredible part of the journey is meeting the people I've met.
Yeah.
It was I knew about certain things in the children's writing world. As I wrote, you'd meet people and you'd go to SPWI meetings and things or conferences. But I honestly did not know the world it would open up to me, going to schools, getting letters or now more emails from children.
Yeah.
I went on a book tour recently in Arkansas, and because of social media, they will highlight your name and you'll see that, oh, somebody's posting, and it'll be a school posting about you. You really don't realize what you're doing for children. Yeah. And I hope that every writer who hears me that writes for children, I know what it's like to be on the road a lot. Yeah. I know how burned out you can get. Yeah. I know how tired you are. I know how sick you are of hearing your voice over and over again. But if you knew what you do for those kids, one lady posted, and she was a grandmother, and she said, oh, my granddaughter came outside just so excited, and I had done a little writing workshop with them and was showing her mother what she wrote, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what this is what it's about.
Sure.
And so I would have to say, more than anything, and that's not writing, but I couldn't have happened if it hadn't been for writing.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have had me at their schools.
That would be weird.
But it's been, that part of it has been such an amazing journey. And if I did not appreciate that enough early.
Yeah.
And it is the thing I love the most right now, at this phase. It's like, I still have something to tell you, these kids,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
still, and I like to think that I'm helping create fearless writers. Yeah.
Oh, I bet you are.
Yeah.
I bet you are. I love that.
I hope
I
so.
love that. Yes. Are you working on anything right now?
I'm supposed to be. No, I have I've had some detours, but
Mhm.
I'm under contract for something that
Hey.
January's, good beginning time again, getting back in.
Yes.
I do have pages with it, but
Yeah.
I need to be in my ritual.
Yeah.
And I know this sounds crazy. We were talking earlier about how now the dining room is my office, and
Yeah.
the office, my old office, is the dining room. But for some weird reason, I write better in this part of the house.
Huh.
And so I think place is really important. Everybody that wants to
Yeah.
write, it may be a little corner of your bedroom. It may be a corner of, a guest bedroom or something. But you need a place that feels right, that
Right.
you don't have to sit down. If nothing's distracting you, you can get right into writing. So
Yeah.
that's, again, I'm getting off track. Yes, I am supposed to be writing something. I will be
Wonderful.
writing that in January. And so it's been a long time coming. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything you wish that people understood? We talked kind of a little bit about this, but is there anything you wish people understood about writers or about authors? People who look at your line of work and maybe they
We're
assume
not
things
rich.
that
We're
they
not all rich.
shouldn't.
I'm
Right.
sure there's some
You're
rich
not
people
doing
out
it for the
there.
money.
And the books do not grow on trees in my backyard.
Right. Right.
I get so tickled when people are like, "You bought that book and I was like, "Yes, I had to buy the book." And they give us 20
Yeah.
bucks,
Yeah.
Really, that probably is it more than anything.
Yeah.
Because it is so funny how people, um, they really have, and I mean, I probably would have too, that
Yeah.
I would have thought, you get as many books as you want, and
Right.
and that we don't, and I'm not trying to pour mouth here. I just think people need to be realistic about
Yeah.
what a writer goes through to
Mhm.
sell books.
Yeah.
You can't just write books anymore.
Right.
You have to be a part of the promotion of it.
Hmm.
And I knew that early on. I put together my own book tour, my
Wow.
first book tour. And because I knew that I wasn't going to be sent on book tour, as a
Right.
first time
Yeah.
writer. And they sent me on book tours later, but I put myself on the first two books that came out. I put together 16-day tours for them.
Wow.
My advance went to my tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also staying at grandparents' homes and,
Hmm.
cousins' homes and things like that.
Right.
But it really, it was a good thing that I did, because I met so many wonderful people
Hmm.
who I think had something to do with my success.
Yeah.
There's too many people that I probably don't even know about. It's like
Yeah.
layers and layers of these people that become champions for you.
Yep.
They are the reason that I think My Louisiana Sky did well.
Yeah.
I remember when I first was published with Henry Holt, and I was going to do some book tour things, and somebody, oh, I can't remember who it was. I can't remember, but they said, "You know what? We don't really do well with bookstores, but that's great. You want to do that. That'll
Hmm.
help the community. But we sell to libraries."
Uh, well,
And which, thank God for libraries. My God.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I remember later, like a year later, being at Henry Holt, and one of the salespeople came in, and or somebody in sales or marketing, and she said, "We don't normally sell to stores, but man, your books, they want your," and I was thinking, do you know what I did to get that to
Right.
happen? But it
Right.
wasn't it, because what would happen on that first book tour, I would go there, and there would be no one, or there'd be three people.
Yeah.
And, exception of one city or two cities that really, got it out there. But I would get, I had a review in the newspaper. I would make sure that that was going to happen.
Mhm.
I'd find out who does the reviews in your city, and I would send them books. And lo and
Wow.
behold, there would be a review. Probably because, quite honestly, my first book tour was in Louisiana, and this books was set in Louisiana.
Right.
So
Right.
I know that had an edge there. But anyway, even though I'd go into these bookstores and there wouldn't be anyone or just a few people, they would talk my book up. They would
Wow.
face it out. They liked me. It was an opportunity for them to see me and meet me.
Sure.
And so and I remember one of the managers said, "Look, Christmas is around the corner.
Mhm.
We're going to be talking about your book to people when they come in and want to
Awesome.
book for a 10 or 12-year-old girl."
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love that. And I don't think people realize how much work it is, how much, because it's not just sitting down at your computer and typing out some words. There's so much involved in wanting to promote it. And, people need to
Yes.
hear of those stories. So do you have a date or an estimated when your next book's coming out, or
No.
no? No.
No, I'm good. My editor and I are going to be talking soon
Okay.
and in January. And I said, I need you to put me on a deadline.
Yeah.
Very understanding.
Yes.
I said, I need you to put me on a deadline. So let's
Yes.
talk. Let's talk. I
Yes.
need to get back into my routine, and I'm happiest in a routine. I'm happiest when I'm writing.
I'm most productive when I have a deadline. I think I
Yes.
work better under pressure than I do just with all the time in the world. So I totally
Yeah.
understand
And
that.
I do that on my own too.
Yeah.
I'll break down my deadlines and say this is going to be done by this, this draft 1, draft 2 is going to be done by that. And then I'll turn it in here. But this on this day. And it gets, it has to be tweaked sometimes.
Sure.
It does. But it's a way of working, and it's a way of feeling real. And I did that even when I didn't have a contract.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that discipline. You gotta,
It is. And
keep at
it
that
is. It's
discipline.
such a wonderful, thing to have, and
Yeah.
it can be developed.
Yes. I need it with exercise.
Oh,
I don't have it, but I need it. I have some motivation. I've got something coming up in a few months. So I've got some motivation now. So after Christmas, I'm going to get serious.
okay. There you go. You'll do it.
Yeah.
You'll do it.
I'll do it.
I have faith in you.
Well, thank you.
Visualize, remember?
Yes, yes, I have to do that. I need to put a picture of myself when I was skinny on the mirror or something to remember that's what I'm going to look like.
Well, if you have something coming up, visualize that,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah. Tell me about your latest book, The Hurricane Girls.
The Hurricane Girls.
Yes.
It came out a little over a year ago, and it's set in New Orleans on the West Bank, which is where I lived.
Awesome.
And went to high school, and had a lot of friends that I'm still in touch with. And I always wanted to do a setting with that story,
Mhm.
but I wanted to write a young adult book. And so years ago, I had an idea I was going to call it the West Bank Girls.
Yeah.
And it had a little bit darker sort of plot. And I told my editor about it, and she said, I think it could be a middle grade. Why don't you make that and maybe not make it so dark? And this is years ago.
Yeah.
So I thought, no, I'm going to do, it's going to be when I like my high school year.
That's right.
And my character is going to be in her high school years. So I put it aside and, pushed it away, thinking one day it would write a young adult book. But middle grade, which for me was called junior high, was such an important time in my life. It's the year that I realized I could be a writer, and I lived in a military housing where it was very, it was a hard place to be at that time.
Yeah.
There were a lot of bullies, and surviving the bus ride to school was really hard. And I could not have done it had it not been for a couple of my friends, Trina and Debbie, especially. Also Teresa one year, Doreen another year. These were military girls too.
Yeah.
I thought about that a lot, and how important those years were.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about the story that I wanted to have set on the West Bank about 3 girls that were friends. And I came up with that idea. I thought, I think my editor's right. I think this can be a junior high book, middle grade book. And that's what happened, is it became a book of friendship. And the reason it's called the Hurricane Girls, besides the fact that New Orleans gets hit by so many hurricanes, is that these girls were born the year that Hurricane Katrina hit the New Orleans area. And they worked on a project together called the Hurricane Girls that their 6th grade teacher had assigned them, and they were assigned to work together. Wow. And that's how they got to know each other and became friends.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And even though it's not about Hurricane Katrina, it does have a thread of it going through the story. Yeah. And those, because the girls had to collect stories from family members and friends that had gone through Hurricane Katrina. And so, in what their stories were, and I did the same thing as they did. I interviewed friends and family members that had done that.
Yeah.
Those stories are woven through that book, but it's not the main part of the book. The main part of the book is friendship. The book comes out in paperback in February. Yay. So I'm excited about that because it makes it accessible for so many more people.
Well, thanks. This has been wonderful. It has been
thanks
wonderful.
For interviewing me, Shara. And I hope you get back to writing too, and don't be hard on yourself.
Eventually I will.
But what you're doing now is wonderful too. That's
I have had the privilege of I'm a part of this community of women who are entrepreneurs and business owners, and that has been a whole journey in itself. But this year they're giving away awards, and so these past 2 years, I've talked to people. I just started talking to authors, fiction authors, but for 2 years, I've talked to people who are helping other people who start nonprofits or volunteer for nonprofits. And I've met the most incredible people all over the world. I mean, literally, I've talked to people in different countries and in almost every state. It's been wonderful. So I nominated several for these awards. Well, several of them are in the running for these awards. And so today I've been communicating with the lady that's in charge of it. And she's like, they're not responding. Can you reach out to them? So I've been reaching out to people that I haven't talked to in a year.
And but getting them good news.
Awesome. Yes. I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful for what I get to do. So,
and you're right. Having a podcast is it's definitely a worthy career and in a fun career, I would imagine, and hard work, right?
It's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. I've not made a penny doing it. So eventually I would like for it to be income, but I'm okay.
You've done this for 2 years?
I've done it for 2 years. October was 2 years.
Well, you already, from what I've understood by listening to podcasts, you've already beat the odds in a lot of ways.
That's what they say.
How many people don't go beyond a certain amount.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're doing it and staying in there and hanging in there, that's great.
I love it.
Right.
Well, thank you so much.
Good one.
Alrighty, you too.
Bye, Shara.
Okay. Bye-bye.